Welcome to the Dobular Museum of Baroque Art. The 5 galleries, separated into Italian, Spanish, French, Dutch, and Flemish regions, contain works that are organized in an effort to show the progression and development of Baroque painting and sculpture. Works are placed alongside related pieces to show the influence and connectivity among paintings and artists working during and before the Baroque era. This audio guide only highlights 9 pieces from our galleries, but we do hope you will take a few extra moments to explore the other works in the collection. To begin, proceed to Gallery 670 in the Italian section of the museum. You will find the entrance to this gallery to the left of the elevator. Gian Lorenzo Bernini's life-size marble sculpture of Apollo and Daphne was commissioned in 1622 by Scipione Borghese, an Italian cardinal. The work shows the climax of the story of Apollo and Daphne as recounted in Ovid's Metamorphoses. As the story goes, Apollo was struck by Cupid's golden arrow and proceeded to fall madly in love with Daphne, the daughter of Perseus, the river god. However, Daphne was struck by Cupid's leaden arrow and was thus fated to forever deny the love of men. As Daphne flees Apollo's advances, she grows tired and prays to her father, "Destroy the beauty that has injured me, or change the body that destroys my life." At this request, Perseus turned his daughter into a laurel tree. The moment we see here shows Daphne in the midst of her transformation, with Apollo trying to wrap his arm around her as she yells for help. Apollo and Daphne is in many ways a paragon of Baroque art. Instead of depicting Daphne as a full tree, or showing events before her transformation, Bernini, like many Baroque artists, chose to represent the most intense and emotional moment of the story. And, although viewers see only this short, fleeting snapshot of the tale, it feels as though the entire narrative is being performed in front of us. This is, in part, due to the meticulous detail and psychological impact of the sculpture. Bernini has beautifully crafted Daphne's flowing hair and delicate fingertips turning into branches, and Apollo's hand reaching forward and feeling the bark that is slowly engulfing Daphne's body. Bernini planned for the work to be viewed from a very specific angle, allowing viewers to see both Apollo and Daphne's reactions simultaneously. This work also makes a fundamental statement about the nature of sculpture itself. Sculptors take one form and shape it into another. They make something real, like a human form, out of something lifeless. However, Bernini's work shows the opposite process, the transformation of the dynamic, living figure of Daphne into a motionless, seemingly lifeless tree. To continue the tour, please proceed to Gallery 673. The Crucifixion of St. Peter, painted in 1601, shows the great influence that Caravaggio would have on the Baroque era as it unfolded over the course of the 17th century. This work depicts the martyrdom of St. Peter by crucifixion. Peter asked that he be crucified upside down, as to avoid imitating Jesus, and thus Caravaggio shows 3 men in the process of inverting the cross. The Romans, however, struggle to erect the cross, communicating that the crime being perpetrated by the Romans already weighs on them, and that Peter's body is heavier and stronger than his aged form would suggest. Caravaggio can be considered the father of tenebrism. As one art historian put it, Caravaggio put the oscuro, meaning shadows, into chiaroscuro. His highly dramatic, vivid realism and deep shadows allowed him to represent the essence of a moment. This focus on the immediate present and the fleeting instant will become a prevalent theme in Baroque art. Also, his use of a neutral background and cellar light focuses the viewer on the most important and expressive elements of the painting, and gives the impression that this scene could have happened anywhere, at any time. As it was painted at the very beginning of the 17th century, the Crucifixion of St. Peter, along with many of Caravaggio's later works, can serve to define the terms of the Baroque period. The zigzag composition creates the sense of movement so closely associated with Baroque art, and the pull of gravity is almost palpable. Peter is also not idealized, and seems frail and weak compared to his portrayal in earlier works, such as the Crucifixion of St. Peter by Michelangelo, which is also located in this gallery. The naturalism seen in this Caravaggio work becomes characteristic of Baroque paintings and sculpture, and, similar to Bernini's Apollo and Daphne, the minute details serve to enhance the emotional impact of the work. Take a moment to look at Peter's troubled facial expression, the nails through his hand and feet, and the tautness of the rope. Please proceed across the gallery to see the next work. Judith slaying Holofernes, painted by Artemisia Gentileschi between 1614 and 1620, depicts a segment from the Book of Judith, and shows the influence of Caravaggio's techniques. Holofernes, an Assyrian general, was poised to attack Judith's home, the town of Bethulia, with his army. However, Holofernes falls in love with Judith and thus lets her enter his tent. Drunk, Holofernes eventually loses consciousness, and Judith beheads him with the help of her maid. This story has been depicted many times over the history of art, but few versions are as personal as Gentileschi's. When she was young and training in her father's studio, Gentileschi was raped by another painter. Although the court ruled in her favor, the trial was devastating and humiliating. This dark experience served to shape the content and style of her works, as she often painted heroic females and used dramatic lighting. In the Book of Judith, Judith is meant to represent the Israelites, finally freed from the Assyrian threat. But for Gentileschi, her work serves as her ultimate redemption and condemnation of her assaulter. She painted herself as a strong, determined Judith and her rapist as the struggling Holofernes. Thus, her depiction is highly psychological and violent, even more so than Caravaggio's. Gentileschi is a Caravaggisti, an artist who adopted elements of Caravaggio's style during the Baroque era. In her Judith slaying Holofernes, as in many of her other paintings, Gentileschi used the deep chiaroscuro, cellar light, and neutral backgrounds pioneered by Caravaggio. Also, compared to most earlier depictions of the scene, Gentileschi, in typical Baroque fashion, shows the most intense, gripping, and in this case violent, moment of the story. Botticelli's and Mantegna's portrayals of the same scene, located to the left of Gentileschi's work, show the immediate aftermath of the beheading. But these works preserve Judith's status as a pure feminine figure. The subject of Judith and Holofernes is a difficult one, because it reverses traditional gender roles and inverts the hierarchy of power. Proceed to Gallery 737 in the Spanish Gallery. Las Meninas, or the Maids of Honor, was painted by Diego Velázquez in 1656. The work shows a busy scene in the Madrid palace of the King Philip IV of Spain. While the king and queen have their portrait painted by Velázquez himself, the young princess is brought in to see her parents. In the spirit of the Baroque era, Velázquez has captured the moment with stunning realism and naturalism, and viewers feel as though they were getting a private look into the life of the royal family. The most intriguing aspect of the painting is the way it blurs the line between reality and illusion. The king and queen are shown in the mirror in the background, insinuating that they are seated behind Velázquez's canvas, right where the viewer is standing to look at the work. This puts the king and queen, and thus the viewer, both inside and outside the work, playing the roles of the observer and the observed. The use of the mirror to enhance the composition and expressivity of the painting may have been inspired by Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini and His Bride, on display in the Flemish section. This painting also includes Velázquez's self-portrait, and many art historians believe he included himself in an effort to elevate his status as first painter to the king. In the midst of this complex composition, Velázquez seems calm and focused, making steady eye contact with the viewer. Because of this complexity, it is interesting that Velázquez would name this painting Las Meninas. Although the two maids are present in the scene, it would not appear that they are the focus of the work. Although it is currently on loan to the Louvre for their exhibit on Spanish Baroque painting, Saint Jerome and the Angel by José Ribera shows how classic Baroque concepts were incorporated into Spanish paintings. Caravaggesque lighting and deep chiaroscuro dominate the work, and the sense of naturalism can be seen in the contrast between the old Saint Jerome and the youthful Angel. Ribera also chose to display the most intense moment in Saint Jerome's life, when he hears an angel blow the horn of the Last Judgment. The subject of martyred saints is also common in Spanish Baroque painting, which was devoted to the religious policies and goals of the Counter-Reformation Catholic Church. Please make your way across the museum to Gallery 104 in the French section to see the next painting. 7th century painting in France, while still considered Baroque, took on many different forms. Influenced by Flemish and Northern painters, as well as the expectations of the Counter-Reformation Catholic Church, French Baroque works range from the classicism of Poussin to the realism of the Lenain brothers. However, in its interest of cohesion, this audio guide will focus on Georges de la Tour, a French painter who followed the lead of Caravaggio and the Utrecht school. De la Tour's Saint Joseph the Carpenter, painted in 1640, is representative of French tenebrism. Similar to Caravaggio, de la Tour utilized deep shadows to focus the viewer on certain elements of the painting. However, as opposed to Caravaggio's cellar light, which has no visible source, de la Tour shows a candle, which illuminates parts of the scene. This painting also depicts Joseph and Jesus, not as the idealized holy men of previous works, but as regular people. This presents a religious theme in a way that would have been relatable to the masses, making the church more accessible to the common person. Saint Joseph the Carpenter shows Joseph working in his shop while a young Jesus looks on. This tranquil, private scene is, however, highly emotional and philosophical. Jesus, whose face is brightly illuminated by the candlelight, seems almost to be the source of the light itself. This portrayal communicates that Jesus is, in a sense, a source of divine light and faith. Joseph is also foreshadowing Jesus' death, as he is working on a piece of wood and his tool forms the shape of a cross. Jesus and Joseph also look at one another, almost as if in a silent, somber understanding of what is to come. Continue past the elevator to Gallery 268 in the Flemish section. The Rape of the Daughters of Leucippus by Peter Paul Rubens was painted in 1616. Rubens' style, which has been described as vigorous, confident, sensual, exuberant, decorative, theatrical, and energetic, is on full display in this work. In Greek mythology, Leucippus was the father of the Leucippides, two women who were betrothed to a set of twins. But Castor and Pollux, the cousins of the twins, intercepted the marriage and carried the two women off to have sons with them. Characteristic of Baroque painting, this work shows the height of the drama, the moment at which the two Leucippides are struggling against their attackers. Rubens is known for his depictions of the female nude, and the Rape of the Daughters of Leucippus is no exception. The two women are in complementary poses, almost mirror images, with only a small space to breathe between them. This composition was used without its usual rhetorical emphasis, but rather in an effort to enhance the swirling, dynamic quality of the painting. This gives the dramatic, very Baroque feeling of ascension rather than rape, which does not seem to fit the tragic nature of the actual story. The work is also arranged in a diamond of intersecting diagonals, rather than in a triangle, representative of one of the changes that occurred as artists move away from mannerism. Since Rubens studied many Italian master painters, his work often shows a fusion of northern and southern styles. The detail and realism of northern painters is here joined with the chiaroscuro of Italian artists. Rubens' treatment of the paint is also very important in the overall impact of the painting. The colors seem almost to reflect light, giving the Leucippides' skin a translucent and delicate quality. Continue to Gallery 317 in the Dutch section. Bathsheba at her bath, painted by Rembrandt in 1654, depicts a moment from the story of King David and Bathsheba. After the king saw Bathsheba bathing, he proceeded to seduce her and impregnate her. Then, in order to marry Bathsheba, he sent her husband to certain death in battle. This painting shows the most emotional and stressful moment of the story, when Bathsheba first receives King David's note and is asked to choose between fidelity to her husband and obedience to her king. By Bathsheba's solemn, pensive facial expression, viewers can see that this is just the beginning of a long and tragic tale. This painting is both similar to and different from the other Baroque works we have seen so far on this tour. Unlike most Italian and Spanish works from this time, there was only a small amount of religious painting being produced in the Dutch Republic. Calvinism, the dominant religion in the area during the 17th century, prohibited religious paintings in churches, so most artists chose to focus on the lower categories in the hierarchy of genres. This painting also seems simpler compared to the works we have seen, especially compared to Rubens' painterly style. Instead of the traditional decorative vitality and energy, this work has a somber feeling. However, like Rubens' work, Bathsheba and her bath shows the influences of both northern and southern styles. A slightly diffused version of Caravaggio's cellar light is used, along with his characteristic dark background and shallow picture plane. The tradition of realism and detail inherited from early Netherlandish painting can also be seen. The body of Bathsheba was most likely based on Rembrandt's companion, Hendrika, and she is not idealized in this work. The natural quality of the body allows viewers to relate to Bathsheba and really understand her feelings of vulnerability and confusion. Continue to Gallery 314 to conclude the tour. Johannes Vermeer painted The Love Letter in 1666, and it is highlighted in this tour because it is representative of Vermeer's style. The painting shows a servant maid handing a letter to her mistress. Already it is obvious that this painting is unlike any other Baroque work we have seen on the tour. There is no sense of movement or energy. Instead, the painting has a calm, quiet feel. The artist used a camera obscura to achieve this unique lighting effect. Vermeer is also known for his genre paintings and interior scenes of everyday middle-class life, which differs from the religious or mythological subject matter we have seen thus far. The emotional impact of the love letter resides almost solely in the facial expressions of the two women. The viewer can see the silent exchange between the two figures. The seated woman seems nervous, while the maid seems confident that the letter contains good news. Vermeer also included certain objects and symbols to help the viewer understand the scene. We can infer that the letter is indeed a love letter, because the seated woman is carrying a cittern, a symbol of love. The broom in the foreground could represent two things, either that domestic duties have been pushed aside in this moment, or it could be indicative of an improper affair. The painting of the stormy sea in the background indicates tempestuous love, and the winding road explains that whoever sent the letter is far away. The composition of the painting also adds to its intrigue. The curtain in the foreground makes viewers feel as though they were spying on a private moment, and the diagonals in the floor create perspective and the illusion of three-dimensionality. This work may have been influenced by Gabriel Metsu's Woman Reading a Letter, or Peter de Hoog's Couple with a Parrot, both on display to the right of this work. Thank you so much for joining us on this tour. Please return your audio guide to the front of the museum.